Tired of the noise and spin? Join the MiddleGround Mic Patreon for 7 days for free. And then it's just $1 a month afterwards. Real talk, real people right now. Sign up today, middlegroundmic.com. Click on the button. 2 children murdered, 18 more wounded. Families are ripped apart in a place meant to be safe. Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My heart goes out because I've got family in that city. And almost instantly, the headlines have shifted to not about the victims, not about the families, not about the mental health. How do we prevent this from happening again? But it's been a focus on the shooter's gender identity. Who cares? People are dead. Who cares what he or she identifies as? Who cares? This is more than about their identity or where they want to, no. And we can't say, ooh, it's because there's been school shootings by quote unquote straight people too. So let's not make that like, ooh, it's a trend. No, stop making everything about someone's sexual preference. Get over it, people. Get over it. Focus on helping these kids that are troubled. Let's find the signs sooner so that these things don't happen. Innocent people don't lose their lives. Today on the MiddleGround Mic, we're going to ask, how do we talk about tragedy without turning it into a weapon? How do we honor the lives of the people lost while digging into the truth? Stay tuned. No left, no right, forward. Lay out the timeline, right? So as you kind of talk about it, August 27th, during morning mass, Robin Westman went in there with 2 AR-style rifles. I do not know the fire one. He fired, I believe, more than 100 shots. 2 children are dead, 18 wounded. That's what we know. There's probably a little bit more going on than has even been released, and then he took his own life as the police arrived, like a coward. You're so big and bad that you want to shoot at people, but yet you're not going to face the consequences. I call that a coward. We got to share community impact, right? We got to talk about these things. The priests there, my gosh, them priests, my heart goes out because that's just tragic. To think about, I have 2 sons that are in school. One's in high school, one's in elementary, and that would just tear me apart. The parents shielded children. There's chaos in the neighborhoods from this. People they're shattered, they're rattled. We have to do better by the victims, by the families, by even the children who are dealing with this. Are we just going to give them a little bit of help, couple weeks, couple months, and then, hey, hopefully it's good, push it off down the road, you know what I mean? Because somehow tragedy has a 2 or 3 month time limit on a budget. Come on, let's get real. These kids are going to need a lot of help. A lot of help. The families who were in that church, the priests, teachers, everybody in this community, they're going to need each other. It's shameful. They're saying that the weapons he brought in there, he did buy legally, okay? He was praising past shooters. Messages have been etched onto the rifles. Kill Trump. Mashallah. Death to Catholics. It's factual, but, those are the facts that we do know, right? I'm sure more is going to come out. But as always, the question is, what do they mean? So to me, when you look at this is another mental health situation. Take the transgender thing out of it. Stop making it about people's sexual preference. This kid obviously had a lot of built up anger and a lot of problems, and either A, didn't know how to handle himself, or B, the people around him just ignored it or didn't take him seriously. Well, newsflash, America, we have to take these things seriously. Not just America, anywhere in the world. We have to take these things seriously. There's kids that are losing their lives because somebody either A, didn't get the help they needed, they were ignored. We're failing them. We as a society are failing our children when they're having problems like this, and we don't address it. I was brought up in a different time where you swallow your feelings down. Well, you know what? I mean, I still do that to a point, but there's some people who can't, and that's okay. That's okay that they can't do that. It's totally okay. But we have to respect them, and we have to do better for these kids. We have to, as adults. Let's talk a little bit about Westman's background, right? 23 years old, Minneapolis native, identified as a transgender. Who cares? That's something that, I swear to gosh, every article you open about this, anything, it's what it's all about. That's even something that the authorities have repeated. It's really, people are dead and we're worried about this person being a transgender. Who cares? And I don't mean that as a negative towards transgenders at all, but this is people are dead and that's what you're worried about? No prior criminal record, but as I've talked about mental health already in this episode several times today, he had documented struggles with depression and identity. Documented. That means that people were aware and they either A, ignored it. I really hope that that's not the case. Like I said, all the facts are not out yet. We've got to do better. We've got to figure out ways. I mean, do we get more training? I don't know. I think that we do, like some sort of awareness to teach other kids, teach ourselves, whatever we have to do. We got to get some sort of awareness on this. He did post online about admiration for other mass shootings, Columbine. I believe Oxford was on there. Don't quote me. The one in Texas, it's crazy. Like, I believe, I believe he had killed Trump on the gun, and I know like all these people are saying like transgender this, and there was all these transgender things. The super big out of 200 plus mass shootings since 1999, only one prior case involved a transgender shooter. This is not a trans issue. It is a hate and violence issue. Identity is part of who Westman was, but it is not a motive. Identifying as something is not a motive. The writings and hate messaging point to something bigger. Extremism mixed with mental instability. So he had he was passionate, right? Something just really got at him. Something really got at him. And then apparently he had some mental health issues that obviously were not addressed enough or completely. I don't know. I'm not one of those people. It's very, very sad. And it's just tragic. And it's just something I've been thinking about all day today. Normally, I post on Fridays, I post a guest interview. I've been kind of recovering from strep throat the last week. And, I talk a lot at work. So it's just by the time I get home, my voice is really, really raspy. And, it's just, because of my tonsils. But that's why we got the MiddleGround coffee mug, right? If you want one, let me know. To people on the right, stop making this about sexuality. People on the left, stop making it about sexuality and calling everybody on the opposite side a Nazi. Like, that is not what we need to be focused on. Some commentators on the right wing side are saying, they've used his identity to quote unquote, go after certain communities, supposedly, right? They're using it as to frame the culture war. Some people are, not everybody, and it's dominated the headlines. RFK suggested antidepressants and hormone therapy might be to blame. And it's been met with a lot of backlash, and justifiably so, because we don't know, right? You shouldn't be saying something like that unless we know. But he did make a good point in a lot of antidepressants and a lot of these medicines that they give kids and adults and everything, violent tendencies, and, things of this nature, like these mental situations. Some people, it gets worse when they take the medication meant to help these things. So again, it goes back to mental health. How do we do it? How can we help people manage this in a way to where their brains don't get fried? Like there's something deeper going on. We've got to have the goal. We got to have the guts to truly, truly go after this. We have to honor the victims. We have to do the right thing to make sure this doesn't happen again. And it's more than just banning a gun. You can ban a gun, they'll use a knife. Like, somebody with issues is going to do something regardless, right? How do we get to the point where we can prevent it? I mean, you can't necessarily always prevent things, but we can address it sooner. We can minimize these things. We have to stop worrying about these senseless issues when it comes to things like this. When it comes to something like this, gender identity is not the focus. It shouldn't even factor. Senator Tina Smith responded to RFK, said, "Just shut up. Stop using this tragedy to push dangerous myths." I agree with the senator in context of, maybe that's not the place or time with it being so fresh to bring that up. But Senator Smith, he's not wrong in terms of what these medicines can do to people. They can really jack some people up. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, he's called for compassion, urging people not to weaponize gender identity. One side's going to blame identity. The other side defends without addressing the deeper failures. Mental health. Some people call it gun access, extremism. I don't think gun access is necessarily the issue here, right? Because he bought it legally. I'm guessing that means he passed any red flags, because I believe Minnesota has that, right? So this goes back to mental health, right? So how do we address that? If you have certain mental health issues that are documented, do you have to go on some kind of wait list or whatever? I know that's borderline. You're really risking the Second Amendment there, right? And I know people go, well, we shouldn't be, these are people's lives, Second Amendment. You can't do that. I agree. You can't mess with the Second Amendment like that. But what we can do is we can actually stop paying lip service. The politicians can stop paying lip service. They can stop proposing bills they know are going to go nowhere. Like, why are you passing a bill that you know is dead on arrival? Or not, I'm not passing, but bringing it. Why are you going to bring up a bill that's a dead on arrival? Why? So in a campaign, you can have some kind of slogan? Come on. We got to be better than that. We're going to frame in the middle ground, right? Both miss the harder, messier truth, mental health. Think about all the facts that we do know, and there's probably going to be more out there. There's probably more that turn something one way or the other, but it's about mental health. We have to do better as a society for our kids and everybody. He had a lot of self-loathing and obsession with prior shooters. How can communities spot warning signs? A good friend of mine that's dear to my heart, he told me once, he goes, where there's smoke, there's fire. Where you see things like this, we need to look at it, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends. And family of friends, if you truly love someone and you know they have mental health issues, you owe it to them to, if you see something, to help them do something. They were legally bought. What does responsible access really mean in America today? Responsible access is certain things that if you've got certain things going on, should you have the ability to buy a gun? That's a tough question. That's something that the voters and our legislature is going to have to decide on. I'm very hard because I'm very big on, make sure you respect the rights, because, you take away guns, you risk a lot of things down the road for short-term satisfaction. But that feeling that people want from that is a direct result that they feel things aren't being addressed. So this is the only thing they know to address it. This is the only thing people know how to address it, because the people that are leading aren't making any effective measurements on improving mental health, whether it's how we address it, how we handle things. Like, they're just not making significant improvements in Washington or probably even in your state legislature. It's just sad that both sides turned this into a talking point thing. So I'm sure at some point later this year, when they're all running campaigns, they can go, woo, woo, I was on the right side. Mind you, that they're not worried about the kids. They're going to give some lip service and say that they are. But if you're saying, terrible tragedy, but my political, what would it look like if leaders focused on the solutions instead of point scoring and trying to get political ads? It would look a lot better, because we might actually make some progress and stop going after things that you don't get the support to get done. Should you stand up for your principles? Yes. But like I say in a lot of my episodes, the art of compromise is real. You have to be willing to give and get. I know a lot of community is going to be holding local vigils, interfaith solidarity. I grew up Catholic, families asking for healing. Let's all, I know people criticize the phrase thoughts and prayers, but let's really keep them in our thoughts and in our prayers. I mean, for a lot of us, that's all we can do to really help those specific people. And then what we can do to help in the everyday thing is, if we see certain things like that, we got to do something. It's in the Oxford shooting here in Michigan. I believe the kid, his parents took him to a shooting range knowing he had violent tendencies. So that right there, it's not the gun. It's literally how people are being handled. And they knew their kid had issues. What does true resilience look like when politics fade away? Resilience is once this stops becoming the headline you see on podcasts and CNN and all this, what's really being done after that happens? Are you going to keep the pressure up on your lawmakers? We should. If we want real meaningful change, we should. It can't just be, well, now the news and everything else is swinging towards the next problem. Well, there's always going to be problems, but we have to address them even when the camera and the mic isn't on them 24/7. We have to push it. This has been about hate, extremism, and access to violence. It's not about one's gender. If we focus only on identity, we miss the larger warning signs. Untreated mental health, I should say, crisis, rising online radicalization among a lot of people. And I mean, these kids are getting radicalized. Okay, they see certain things, they adopt it. Think when your kids sees this cool little thing on there, like cookies, and I want to do this, that it's the same principle behind it. These kids are getting radicalized. So don't fool yourself into thinking that it's not. It's the algorithm doesn't intentionally try to, radicalize people, but you got to remember it's how it's approached, right? And that just kind of sometimes is what pops in. So we really have to look at that. And how easily are weapons of war obtained. I'm very hesitant to really be like, oh, we need to put more rules on this and da when it's clearly mental health. Even if you ban the guns, well, they're going to go on a stabbing thing. That's happened in London. So that doesn't necessarily solve the problem. We have a bad mental health problem in America. Everybody knows. A lot of politicians have talked about it, but when the cameras go off, that's about where it ends. We can honor these people by demanding change, rejecting the hate of one another, whether you're a Democrat hating a Republican hating a Democrat, or an independent. Hate cannot factor into this equation here. It cannot. We have to fix it. We got to stop letting this tragedy divide us. Our country needs us. These people, the people in Minneapolis, I should say, the families there, the victims, the people that were unfortunately there to witness it. They need us to do the right thing. They need us to keep our heads on straight. And, it's very disturbing. I'll just put it like that. The middle ground isn't easy. It means holding two truths at once, acknowledging identity while not scapegoating communities. We got to recognize hate without fueling more hate. You can't dislike somebody for something and then hate them even more just because. We got to face the uncomfortable reality that our mental health system is failing. Till children are gone, families are grieving, and that's what matters most above everything else right now. The path forward starts not with blame, but with balance. Subscribe to the MiddleGround Mic newsletter and keep this conversation going, because if we don't seek the middle, we're going to lose the truth. No left, no right, forward. Have a good day.